I need you to understand something before we go any further. There are doors in your life that you have been standing in front of, doors that looked like walls, doors that had no handles, no hinges, no sign of life on the other side. And somewhere between the waiting and the wondering, you started to believe that maybe that door just wasn't for you. Maybe you started to convince yourself that you had missed your moment, that the window had closed, that God had moved on to somebody who was more ready, more worthy, more put together than you were on your best day. But I came to tell you, this morning is not an ordinary morning, because what God is doing right now doesn't require your permission, doesn't require your preparation, and it definitely doesn't require your perfect record. He is moving behind the scenes of your disappointment. He is working in the hallways of your heartbreak. He is opening doors. Doors you never even knew existed. Doors you couldn't see because the pain was blocking your vision. You didn't miss it. You didn't mess it up. You are simply standing at the edge of what God has been preparing all along. So take a breath, straighten your crown, because what's coming through that door, honey, you are not ready. I need you to sit with this for a moment, because some of you have been carrying a weight that nobody even knows about. You have been dragging around the memory of a door that closed on you, and not just any door, the door you prayed over, the door you fasted for, the door you told everybody was going to open because you just knew God had placed it in your path. And then it shut, and it didn't just close quietly either. It slammed. It slammed so hard that the echo of it has been ringing in your spirit ever since. Maybe it was a relationship that you poured everything into. You gave that person the best version of yourself. You loved them through their broken places. You showed up even when it was inconvenient, even when it was painful, even when every sign was telling you to walk away. But you stayed because you believed. You believed that God had put that person in your life for a reason. And then one day, without warning, that door closed, and you were left standing on the outside of something you had already decorated on the inside. Or maybe it was a career opportunity, a position you were more than qualified for. You had the resume, you had the experience, you had the favor, or at least you thought you did. You interviewed well, you followed up. You prayed over that opportunity like your life depended on it. And then somebody else got the call. Somebody else got the promotion. Somebody else walked through the door that had your name written all over it, or so you thought. And the rejection didn't just sting your pride. It shook your faith. Because here is what nobody prepares you for. Nobody prepares you for the moment when the thing you believed God for doesn't happen. Nobody sits you down and tells you what to do with your faith when the answer is no. When the door closes and God doesn't explain himself. When heaven goes silent and you are left in the hallway of your own confusion, wondering if you missed something, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if maybe God forgot about you in the middle of his busy schedule of blessing everybody else around you. And so you started to internalize it. You started to make the closed door mean something about you. You started to tell yourself that you were not good enough, not smart enough, not anointed enough, not ready enough. You built a whole case against yourself using the closed door as your primary exhibit. And every time you tried to move forward, every time you got a little momentum, that closed door would show back up in your memory and remind you of the last time you believed and got hurt. But what if I told you that the door closing had nothing to do with your worthiness and everything to do with your destiny? What if the door didn't close because God was punishing you, but because God was positioning you? What if the relationship that ended was ending because God could see what you couldn't see? That the person on the other side of that door was going to cost you something that you couldn't afford to lose. Your peace, your purpose, your identity, your future, and God, in his mercy, loved you enough to close it before you walked any further into something that was going to diminish you instead of develop you. See, we have been taught to celebrate open doors. We throw parties for open doors. We post about open doors. We give testimonies about open doors. But nobody talks about the grace that lives inside a closed door. Nobody preaches about the protection that is wrapped up in a no. Nobody tells you that sometimes the most loving thing God can do for you is shut the very thing you were begging Him to keep open. Think about it this way. If you knew then what you know now, would you have fought so hard to keep some of those doors open? If you could go back to some of those moments with the wisdom you are walking in today, with the clarity that time and healing have given you, would you have gotten on your knees and begged God to let you into some of those rooms? I don't think you would, because now you can see that what looked like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like abandonment was actually alignment. What broke your heart was actually breaking patterns that would have followed you into the next season and contaminated everything God had already prepared. And here is what I really need you to understand. God is not reactive. He is not up in heaven scrambling to fix your situation after the door closed. He knew the door was going to close before you ever knocked on it. He saw the end from the beginning. And He allowed you to walk toward it, allowed you to knock on it, and yes, allowed it to close because He needed you to be in that hallway. He needed you to feel that loss, not to break you, but to build something inside of you that comfort and convenience never could have produced. There is a strength that only comes through disappointment. There is a faith that only develops in the dark. There is a version of you that could not have been born in the room you were trying so hard to get into. The closing of that door was the beginning of a process that God was using to strip away everything that was keeping you from walking fully into who He called you to be. So that door that closed on you, the one you cried over, the one you mourned, the one you are still a little bitter about if you are being completely honest, that door was not your punishment. There is something that happens to you when you have been waiting long enough. Something shifts inside of you, and not in the good way, not in the faith is growing. Trust is deepening kind of way that the Sunday morning version of Christianity tries to sell you. No, I am talking about something quieter and more dangerous than that. I am talking about the moment when hope starts to feel like a liability, when believing starts to feel foolish, when you look around at your life and the gap between what God promised you and what you are actually living becomes so wide that you stop trying to explain it and you just start surviving it. You stop talking about the dream. You stopped writing it down. You stopped confessing it out loud because somewhere along the way, saying it out loud started to feel like setting yourself up for another round of disappointment. And so you buried it. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly and quietly, the way you bury things you love but can no longer afford to carry. You tucked the vision away. You filed the promise in a drawer somewhere in the back of your heart and told yourself that maybe it was never really from God. Maybe it was just your own ambition dressed up in spiritual language. Maybe you wanted it so badly that you convinced yourself God had said yes when really the silence was the answer all along. And I need you to know that I am not judging you for where your mind went. I understand why you went there, because the alternative of continuing to believe for something that shows no sign of arriving, is exhausting in a way that most people will never admit out loud. Faith is not always the triumphant fist in the air experience that we make it look like from the pulpit. Sometimes faith is just deciding not to give up on a Tuesday afternoon when nothing is moving and nobody is clapping for you, and God feels very far away and very quiet and very unbothered by the mess you are standing in. But here is what I need to pull back the curtain on this morning. Here is what the enemy does not want you to see. While you were trying to figure out why nothing was happening, something was happening. While you were sitting in the silence wondering if God had forgotten your name, God was in the preparation room. And the preparation room is not a glamorous place. It does not have windows. You cannot see inside of it. You cannot get a progress report from it. You cannot send a prayer up and get a status update back with an estimated time of arrival. The preparation room operates on God's calendar, not yours. And God's calendar does not answer to your anxiety or your timeline or your very reasonable human need to know what is happening next. And what God was preparing was not just the thing. He was not just arranging circumstances and lining up connections and shifting atmospheres, although he was doing all of that too. But the deeper work, the more important work, was what he was preparing inside of you. Because here is the truth that we have to be mature enough to receive. You were not ready for what God had promised you. And I say that not as an insult, but as the most loving and honest thing I can offer you today. The you that was standing at the beginning of the wait was not equipped to carry the weight of what God had prepared. The you that was crying at the starting line did not yet have the capacity, the character, or the rootedness to walk into what was waiting on the other side without losing yourself in it. See, God is not just interested in getting you to the destination. He is deeply, intentionally, relentlessly concerned with who you are becoming on the way there. Because what good is it to arrive at your promise and fall apart once you get there? What good is it to walk through the door if you do not have the internal infrastructure to sustain what is on the other side? God has watched too many of his children receive things before they were ready and then self-destruct in the middle of their own blessing. And so in his wisdom, the wisdom that sees every version of you simultaneously, the you that you are right now, and the you that you are becoming, and the you that you will be when this is all over, in that wisdom, he decided that the preparation was more important than the speed. And the preparation looked like the very things you were trying to escape. It looked like the season of obscurity where nobody was watching and nobody was celebrating, and you had to learn how to be faithful when there was no applause. It looked like the relationship that fell apart and forced you to go to therapy and deal with patterns you had been carrying since childhood. It looked like the financial pressure that taught you discipline and stewardship and the kind of dependence on God that prosperity never could have produced in you. It looked like the health scare that made you slow down and reconnect with your body and your spirit and your priorities. It looked like the betrayal that taught you discernment, that taught you who was really for you and who was just close enough to take from you. Every single thing that felt like it was working against you was actually working for you. Every delay was a developer. Every disappointment was a professor teaching you a curriculum that you could not have learned any other way. And God sat in the preparation room with you through all of it. He was not distant while you were being developed. He was present in the process, guiding the pressure, measuring the heat, making sure that what was being forged inside of you was strong enough to last. And now, right now, the preparation is reaching completion. The thing that you could not see because the waiting had clouded your vision, because the pain had narrowed your perspective, because disappointment had taught you to stop looking up. That thing is ready. And more importantly, because of everything you walked through, I want to talk to somebody who is tired, not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep can fix, not the kind of tired that a vacation or a spa day or a long weekend can touch. I am talking about the kind of tired that lives in your bones, the kind of tired that has settled into the deepest parts of you after years of holding on, years of believing, years of showing up and doing the right thing and making the right choices and trusting God with the outcome. And still, the thing you have been waiting for has not come. And the wariness of that is not something you can explain to somebody who has not lived it. It is a very specific kind of exhaustion that comes from wanting something deeply, pursuing it faithfully, and watching the clock keep moving while the promise stays still. And what makes it worse is that you are surrounded by people who mean well, but do not know what to do with your honesty. So they hand you scriptures like bandages over wounds that need surgery. They tell you to just keep praying. They tell you that God's timing is perfect. They tell you that your blessing is right around the corner. And you smile and you nod and you say amen, because what else are you going to do? But on the inside, on the quiet inside that nobody gets to see, you are thinking, I have been hearing that my whole life, and I am still waiting. I have been turning corners and the blessing keeps moving. I have been patient, I have been faithful, I have been doing everything I know how to do, and I am running out of ways to keep pretending that the wait is not costing me something. Because the wait does cost you something. Let us be honest about that this morning. Waiting is not free. It costs you energy. It costs you emotional bandwidth. It costs you relationships sometimes, because not everybody can wait with you. Some people can only celebrate with you, and when the celebration does not come on their schedule, they quietly exit. Waiting costs you sleep. It costs you peace on certain nights when your mind will not stop running through every possible scenario of what is wrong, what you missed, what you could have done differently, why everybody else seems to be moving forward while you are still in the same place you were 2 years ago. And somewhere in the middle of all of that cost, a very dangerous thought begins to form, and the thought is this: maybe the waiting means it is never going to happen. Maybe the delay is actually a denial that God just has not been direct enough to say out loud. Maybe I should just let go of this thing and find something more realistic to believe for. And that thought is dangerous not because it is loud, but because it is quiet. It does not announce itself, it just slowly, gradually begins to reframe everything you once believed until one day you look up and realize that you have stopped hoping without even making a conscious decision to do so. But I need you to hear me today. I need you to hear this deep in the part of you that is still holding on by a thread. Your waiting was never wasted, not one day of it, not one prayer of it, not one tear of it, not one moment where you chose faith over fear and it felt like it made absolutely no difference. None of it was wasted. Because God does not operate a system where sincere seeking goes unrecorded. He does not run a kingdom where faithfulness disappears into the atmosphere without consequence. Every single moment of your wait has been seen, has been counted, has been woven into something that you do not have the full picture of yet. See, we evaluate waiting by what we can see. We measure the wait by the absence of the thing we are waiting for. And because the thing is not here yet, we conclude that nothing is happening, but that is a human conclusion drawn from a human vantage point. And your vantage point, as real and as valid as it is limited. You can only see what is in front of you. You can only see the closed doors and the empty space and the calendar pages that keep turning without the breakthrough you were promised. But God sees the entire timeline simultaneously. He sees what your waiting is producing in you. He sees what your waiting is arranging around you. He sees the people who are being moved into position, the resources that are being gathered, the circumstances that are being orchestrated, all of it happening beneath the surface of what is visible to your natural eye. Think about a seed for a moment. When you plant a seed in the ground, you do not see anything for a long time. The ground looks the same the day after you plant it as it did the day before. And if you were only evaluating based on what you could see above the surface, you would conclude that nothing was happening. You might even conclude that the seed was dead. But underneath the soil, in the dark and in the hidden place, the seed is doing the most important work of its entire existence. It is breaking open. It is pushing roots down. It is building the foundation that will eventually support everything that grows above the ground. And the time it spends invisible is not wasted time. It is the most critical time. It is the time that determines how strong the plant will be, how deep the roots will go, how much weight the stem will eventually be able to carry. And you are that seed. The season you are in right now, the season that feels like nothing is happening, the season that looks empty from the outside, This is your root season. This is the season where God is doing the deepest, most foundational work in you. The work that nobody will see until the moment you break through the surface. And when you do break through, when the door finally opens and the promise finally arrives and the blessing finally manifests, people are going to look at you and marvel. They are going to wonder how you got there so fast. They are going to see the fruit and have no idea about the roots. They are going to celebrate the harvest without knowing anything about the winter you endured to get there. But you will know what it cost. You will know what you almost gave up. You will know the nights you spent talking yourself back from the edge of unbelief. You will know the mornings you chose to praise God when you had absolutely no evidence that anything was changing. And that knowledge, that deep, personal, intimate knowledge of what it took to get there, is going to become one of the most powerful tools in your hands. Because you are not just being prepared to receive the promise. You are being prepared to carry a testimony that will hold somebody else together when they are in the middle of their wait, and they do not think they can survive another day of it. Your waiting was working, even when it did not feel like it was working. The prayers you prayed in the dark were landing. The faith you held onto with trembling hands was being honored. The mornings you woke up and decided to trust God one more time, even though nothing had changed. Those mornings were building something inside of you that cannot be manufactured, cannot be shortcut, cannot be purchased, and cannot be imitated. It could only be grown in the soil of a wait that felt too long and cost too much and made absolutely no sense from the outside looking in. And God saw every single moment of it. He did not look away when it got hard. He did not get distracted by somebody else's story and forget where he left yours. He has been present in your waiting the same way he was present in the promises he made you. And the same God who spoke the word over your life in the beginning is the same God who has been tending to it through every season of silence and delay and disappointment. The word has not expired. The promise has not been reassigned. The dream he placed inside of you did not have a shelf life. And the waiting that felt like it was going to break you was actually the very thing that was making sure you would not break when the promise finally. I need you to understand the kind of God you are serving this morning. Because I think somewhere between the hardship and the waiting and the disappointment and the doors that closed in your face, you may have started to shrink your theology down to the size of your experience. And when your experience has been painful, when your experience has been marked by loss and delay and unanswered prayers and things that did not work out the way you believed they would, it is very easy to unconsciously begin to believe in a smaller God, a God who is trying his best but is limited by circumstances, a God who wants to help you but is somehow being blocked by the opposition, a God who had a plan for your life but is now having to improvise because things did not go the way he intended. And I need to dismantle that this morning with everything in me, because that is not the God of the Bible. That is not the God who spoke the universe into existence out of nothing. That is not the God who parted the Red Sea when the enemy was closing in from behind and there was nowhere left to run. That is not the God who shut the mouths of lions and cooled the flames of a furnace and raised dead men back to life on the fourth day, when everybody had already accepted that it was over. The God you serve does not scramble. The God you serve does not panic. The God you serve does not sit in heaven wringing his hands wondering how he is going to work this out for you. He is not reactive. He is sovereign. And sovereign means that there is not a single door in your life, not one, that opens or closes outside of his awareness and his authority. The scripture is not subtle about this. It is not vague or open to interpretation. When God says in the book of Revelation that he holds the key of David, that he opens and no one can shut and shuts and no one can open, that is not poetry. That is not metaphor. That is a declaration of absolute authority over every access point in your life Every opportunity, every relationship, every season, every door that you have ever stood in front of, hopeful and trembling, believing that this was the one. God had the key. And every door that you have ever watched close on you, leaving you confused and heartbroken on the other side, God had the key to that one too. Nothing happened by accident. Nothing slipped through the cracks. Nothing caught him off guard. And I know that might be uncomfortable for some of you, because if God holds the key to every door, then that means the doors that closed had his permission to close. And that raises questions that are not easy to sit with. It raises the question of why. Why would a good God allow a door to close that you needed to walk through? Why would a loving father withhold something from his child that the child was desperately asking for? And I am not going to stand here and pretend that those questions have simple answers, because they do not. The ways of God are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And there are dimensions of his wisdom that we will not fully comprehend on this side of eternity. But what I can tell you is this: a God who holds the keys is a God who can be trusted with the doors. Because the alternative of living in a world where doors open and close randomly, where circumstances are driven by chance and luck and the mood of other people, that world is far more terrifying than a world governed by a sovereign God who sees the end from the beginning and whose plans for you are plans for a future and a hope. I would rather live in a world where God is in control of what I cannot understand than in a world where nobody is in control of anything at all. The sovereignty of God is not a doctrine designed to make you passive. It is a foundation designed to keep you from falling apart when life does not make sense. And here is what the enemy has been trying to keep from understanding. The enemy knows that if you ever truly grasp the authority of the God you serve, if you ever truly internalize the fact that no weapon formed against you can prosper, and that what God has blessed no man can curse, and that the door he has assigned to your name cannot be locked by any human hand or any demonic force or any circumstance of life. If you ever really get that down in your spirit, you will become dangerous. You will become the kind of believer that hell cannot strategize against effectively. Because a person who knows that God opens doors that no man can shut does not crumble when people try to block them. They do not collapse when systems fail them. They do not spiral when opportunities fall through. They simply stand on the word and wait for the God of the key to move. And he does move. That is what history tells us. That is what the testimony of every person who has ever walked through a season of impossibility and come out on the other side tells us. God moves. He moves in ways that defy natural explanation. He moves in ways that make people stop and say there is no way that happened by coincidence. He moves through people who were not even thinking about you and suddenly felt compelled to make a phone call. He moves through systems that were designed to keep you out and finds a loophole that nobody planned for. He moves through the ruins of your greatest failure and builds something from it that is more beautiful and more solid than what you had originally planned for yourself. Think about Joseph for a moment. Here is a young man whose own brothers sold him into slavery. The door of his family, the door of his freedom, the door of his future as he understood it, all of it closed violently and without warning. And then in Egypt, just when it seemed like things might turn around, the door closed again when Potiphar's wife lied on him, and he ended up in prison. 2 closed doors. 2 devastating, humiliating, hope-crushing closed doors. And yet the Bible tells us that even in prison, God was with Joseph. And not just present with him in a sentimental way. God was actively working, actively positioning, actively using every closed door as a corridor that was leading Joseph to the exact place he needed to be for the assignment that had been on his life before he was even born. And when God was ready, when the preparation was complete and the timing was right and the stage was set, he opened a door for Joseph that no human being could have engineered. In one conversation, in one moment of divine favor, Joseph went from the prison to the palace, from the forgotten to the celebrated, from the one who had been counted out to the one who was put in charge. And every person who had ever closed a door on Joseph, every person who had ever dismissed him or discarded him, or decided he was not worth their investment, every single one of them became part of the story of how God got Joseph to his destiny. And that is what God does with the people who refuse to let closed doors define them. He takes every person who shut a door in your face and makes them a footnote in the testimony of how he opened something bigger. He takes every system that denied you and uses the denial as the setup for a demonstration of his power that could not have happened any other way. He takes the very thing that was meant to stop you and turns it into the thing that catapults you further than your own effort ever could have taken you. So I need you to stop giving other people the authority over your life that only belongs to God. Stop letting a rejection letter have the final word. Stop letting a closed door write the conclusion of your story. Stop letting the opinion of people who do not hold your key determine how you see your future. Because the one who holds the key to every door in your life is not your employer, is not your ex, is not the person who passed you over, is not the institution that denied your application, is not the family member who wrote you off. The one who holds the key is the same one who knit you together in your mother's womb and knew your name before the foundation of the world and has never once, not for a single second, taken his eyes off of you or his hand off of your life. And that God, the God of the key, the God of open doors, the God whose authority over your life is absolute and uncontested and cannot be overruled by any power in heaven or on earth or under the earth, that God is moving on your behalf right now. Not eventually, not when you get yourself together, not when you figure out the right formula or say the right prayer or reach some invisible threshold of worthiness that you have been trying to hit for years. Right now, in this moment, with every flaw and every failure and every unresolved thing still present in your life, I want you to think about the last time you stood at a threshold. Not a physical one necessarily, but the kind of threshold that exists in the spirit. The kind of moment where everything in your life is shifting, where you can feel that something is different, even if you cannot yet see what is different, where the atmosphere around you has changed in a way that you cannot fully articulate, but you know, somewhere deep in the knowing place that lives beneath logic and beneath reason and beneath everything you can explain with your mouth. You know that something is about to happen. I want you to think about that feeling, because some of you are in that exact moment right now, and you do not even realize it because you have been so focused on what is behind you that you have not noticed that the door in front of you is no longer the same door it was yesterday. Because this is not your ending. Let me say that again with everything in me. This is not your ending. The chapter you are in right now, the one that has felt like the longest, hardest, most confusing chapter of your entire life, this is not where your story concludes. This is not the final paragraph. This is not the last page. And I know that the circumstances are trying to convince you otherwise. I know that the bank account and the broken relationship and the diagnosis and the delayed dream and the closed door and the unanswered prayer are all lining up like witnesses in a courtroom trying to build a case that your story is over. But I need you to know that your circumstances do not get to write your conclusion. Only God holds the pen that writes the final word over your life. And God is not finished. And here is what I need you to understand about endings and entrances. In God's economy, they are almost always the same moment. What looks like the end from one angle looks like an entrance from another. What feels like a closing from where you are standing is actually an opening from where God is standing. And the reason we miss it so often, the reason we sit in our grief and our confusion and our fear and fail to see what God is doing, is because we are evaluating our situation from the ground level when God is operating from an aerial view. We are so close to our own pain that we cannot see the shape of what He is building. We are so deep inside the valley that we cannot see that the valley is leading somewhere. We cannot see that the path through the darkness has a destination, and the destination is not more darkness. Think about every person in Scripture who stood at what looked like an ending and discovered it was actually an entrance. Think about Ruth standing in the middle of a field in a foreign country, a widow with nothing but her loyalty and her willingness to work. By every natural measure, Ruth's story should have been over. She had lost her husband. She had left her homeland. She had no status, no resources, no network, no plan. She was gleaning the leftovers from somebody else's harvest just to survive. And yet that field, that place that looked like the lowest point of her story, was actually the entrance to everything God had prepared for her. Boaz was in that field. Redemption was in that field. The lineage of David was in that field. The ancestral line that would eventually produce the Savior of the world was in that field. And Ruth did not know any of that when she woke up that morning and decided to keep going. She just showed up. She just put one foot in front of the other in the middle of what looked like an ending and walked straight into her entrance. And that is what God is asking you to do this morning. Not to have it all figured out, not to understand the full picture, not to see the complete blueprint of where this is going before you take the next step. He is simply asking you to keep moving. He is asking you to get up one more time. He is asking you to open your hands one more time and release the ending you had planned for yourself so that He can give you the entrance He has been preparing. Because the entrance He has for you is bigger than the ending you are mourning. The door He is opening is wider than the door that closed. The thing He is ushering you into is more expansive, more aligned, more saturated with purpose than anything you could have accessed through the door you were trying to force open with your own strength. And I need to talk to you about what it means to walk through an entrance, because it requires something from you that nobody really prepares you for. It requires you to release your old identity. It requires you to stop introducing yourself by your wounds. It requires you to stop letting your history narrate your future. Because when God opens a new door, He is not just changing your location. He is changing your identity. He is not just moving you from one room to another. He is moving you from one version of yourself to another. And the new version of you that is about to walk through this door cannot carry everything that the old version of you has been dragging around. You cannot walk into your entrance with the bitterness from the ending still wrapped around your shoulders. You cannot walk into the new thing God has prepared while your hands are still full of the old thing you refuse to release. You cannot receive what is waiting on the other side of this door if you are still trying to resurrect what died on the other side of the last one. And I know that releasing is painful. I know that letting go feels like loss, even when what you are letting go of was hurting you. I know that there is a grief that comes with closing the chapter on something you loved, something you invested in, something you built your identity around. And God is not asking you to pretend that grief is not real. He is not asking you to skip over the pain and perform a joy that has not yet arrived. But He is asking you to grieve with hope. He is asking you to mourn without making a permanent residence in the mourning. He is asking you to feel the weight of what ended without letting the weight of it keep you from moving toward what is beginning. Because there is something beginning right now in your life. There is a stirring in the spirit that is not about what was, it is about what is next. And what is next has been in preparation longer than you know. What is next has been thought through by a God who makes no mistakes and wastes no pain and does not bring you this far to leave you here. And I want to speak to the person who has survived things that should have taken you out. I want to speak to the one who has been through the kind of seasons that leave marks, the kind of loss that changes you, the kind of betrayal that rewires you, the kind of disappointment that makes you cautious in ways you were not cautious before. You are still here, and your survival is not accidental. Your survival is not luck. Your survival is the evidence of a God who would not let the ending come before the entrance. Every time life tried to write the final sentence over your story, someone intervened. Every time the enemy thought he had finished you, you got back up. And you may not have felt strong when you got back up. You may have gotten up trembling, gotten up crying, gotten up with absolutely no idea what you were going to do next. But you got up. And every time you got up, you were moving closer to this moment. Every time you chose to live, to hope, to believe one more time, you were walking toward a door that was already being unlocked on the other side. And this morning, that door is open, not cracked, not partially ajar, not halfway there, open. And the God who opened it is standing on the other side of it, not as a stranger, but as the one who has known you all along, the one who watched you in the waiting, the one who counted every tear, the one who never once left the room, even when the room was so dark you could not feel his presence. He is on the other side of this door, and he is not calling you in based on your perfection or your preparation or your performance. He is calling you in because you are his, and he has something on the other side of this threshold that has your name written on it and always did. So I need you to straighten up this morning. I need you to lift your head. I need you to pull your shoulders back and remind yourself of who you are and whose you are. Because you are not somebody who sits in the hallway forever. You are not somebody who watches other people walk through doors while you stay behind. You are not the person the enemy has been trying to convince you that you are. Small and overlooked and running out of time and out of options and out of chances. You are the child of the Most High God. You are the one he thought about when he was planning this season. You are the one the promise was written for. And this door, this beautiful, wide, God-ordained, devil-defying, life-changing door that is standing open in front of you right now, this door is not somebody else's entrance. So I need to bring us back to where we started this morning. Because we walked in here carrying things. Some of you walked in here carrying the memory of closed doors. Some of you walked in here carrying the exhaustion of a wait that has gone on longer than you ever anticipated. Some of you walked in here carrying the quiet grief of a dream that you had almost talked yourself into giving up on. Some of you walked in here with a smile on your face and pain in your chest, and nobody in this room knew the difference because you have gotten so good at showing up for everybody else while falling apart on the inside. But God knew. He knew before you sat down. He knew before you walked through those doors this morning. He knew what you needed to hear, and he loved you enough to make sure you were in a place where you could hear it. That is not coincidence. That is not accident. That is the intentionality of a father who sees you, who knows you, and who has never once stopped working on your behalf, even when every piece of evidence in your natural life was suggesting otherwise. We talked about closed doors this morning and how they were never about your rejection. They were always about your protection. We talked about how God was preparing things in the hidden places that your eyes could not access and your logic could not calculate. We talked about how your waiting was not empty. It was full of root work and character development and the kind of deep internal formation that can only happen in seasons that cost you something. We talked about a God who holds every key, who opens doors that no man can shut and shuts doors that no man can open, whose authority over your life is absolute and whose plans for you have never been canceled. And we talked about the fact that this, right here, right now, this moment you are standing in, this is not your ending, this is your entrance. And I want to close with this. I want to close with the thing that I believe God has been trying to say to you through every word that has been spoken this morning. He sees you. Not the version of you that you perform for other people. Not the version of you that has it together and says the right things and shows up reliably and never lets anybody see the cracks. He sees the real you. The you that is tired. The you that has questions. The you that has held on by a thread on nights when letting go would have been so much easier. He sees that you, and he is not disappointed in that you. He is not standing at the door of the new season checking to see if you are cleaned up enough or healed enough or faith-filled enough to qualify. He is simply saying, come. Come as you are. Come with the limp and the questions and the unresolved grief and the faith that is smaller than you wish it was. Come with the scars from the last season still visible on your skin. Come with the memory of every door that closed and every promise that felt delayed, and every moment you were not sure you were going to make it through. Bring all of it through this door, because none of it disqualifies you. All of it is part of the story. All of it is part of the testimony that God is writing over your life with a pen that has never run out of ink and a hand that has never grown tired. This morning, God is opening doors you could not see, doors that were always yours. Doors that were being prepared in seasons you were just trying to survive. Doors that are so perfectly aligned with who you are and what you carry and where you are going that when you walk through them, you are going to look back and see with the kind of clarity that only hindsight can give you. That every single thing that happened, every closed door, every painful delay, every devastating loss, every moment of confusion and silence and waiting, all of it was leading you right here, right to this threshold, right to this open door. And all God is asking you to do this morning is walk through it.